Hey kiddies, good afternoon. As you're working on your transformers, you're going to be choosing a theme to resource for photographs to collect and close cut and replace your body parts with. Now, this lesson is on selection, and I wanted to point out a few of the different ways in which you can make selections from clip art and stuff on the internet. Now, obviously, you're searching when you're searching on the internet, you're searching for the largest file size on things, but there's a few other things to look out for. The first I wanted to cover off is GIFs or BMPs. So the GIFs or BMPs are files that usually have no background to begin with. So if you can get one of those every now and then, they're usually associated with drawings or graphics instead of photographs. But sometimes they get made up that way. So if you happen to be able to get them in, they'll come in with no background, and so then you can simply Control T to modify them, transform them, rotate them, and put them into position however you need them to be. So that's GIFs or BMPs. Okay, so the next one I want to show you here is adjusting for tolerance. And in every case, we're looking to get rid of the background here. And the tolerance on something like the Magic Wand, the quick selection tool, is usually up, but underneath that is the Magic Wand tool. The Magic Wand's job is to select colors that are of the same tonal quality value. So if I, sorry, let's drop that one. If I go here to adjust my tolerance one, if I click on this, the problem here is that the plane is the same as the background, and the object is fairly close to the background. So when I click on the background to isolate it, unfortunately it also includes a lot of the aircraft in this particular case. There's a couple of things I can do with that. One is I can use my tools in order to subtract. By holding down the Alt key, it turns it into a negative, and I can subtract from this particular selection by going around it, double clicking to end, and I have subtracted that part of it. But a better quality one, especially when you get these graphics that come in with a white background already, someone else has gone to the trouble of removing that white background, so you might as well use it. But on the Magic Wand, again, if I select, it's going too far in. So up here in the top is the tolerance. This is the range of tonal quality from the first one that you pick. So here I'm clicking on the blue, you're only getting the blue. Here I click on the white, you get lots of the white. I click on the gray, you're only going to get that gray part. So I can increase the tolerance or decrease the tolerance simply by punching in a new number here. I'm going to punch in, say, 2. Something really small, and this time when I click, it only gives me the white, and I can hold the shift key down in this case to add to the selection. So as I go along, it's only looking for tonal quality of 2 or more. So I can go back and adjust that, say 3 or 4, give that another try to see how close I get. And in this particular case, I can get fairly close. It's eating into the nose here, so I'm going to make sure that I make some adjustments by subtracting that selection. In the end, you're going to be left with the exterior selection exactly where you want it to be. And here I'm using the plus to add that particular stuff to the selection, and I'm also going to add this part down here in the back to the selection as well. So we now have that particular stuff. Now if I hit the backspace button, I am subtracting that selection. Sounds good, but it leaves me a lot of flaws and leaves me open. I'd rather you guys get used to using the masking technique instead. So because this is permanent and you can't go back and make changes as we've discussed. I'm going to go Control Z on that. So in order to make the mask, if I click down on this mask button right here, I'm going to have a problem, and here's the problem. It masks the wrong thing. Because what the mask does when you have a selection active, it assumes that whatever's inside the mask is what you want to keep, and you want to mask everything else out so you can't see it. So unfortunately we've selected the background and not the object, so that's what masks. There's two ways of changing this. The first is if you happen to get to this situation, what is black here in the mask side is stopping you from seeing the pixels. So what we do is we go and we invert that image. So image adjustments invert, which makes black white and white black. So basically we have inverted that bitmap on the mask side here, and therefore it masks it perfectly. Now the other way to do it is, let me just back up here a second, is to let's get rid of this. Actually, on a second. What's going on? Okay, I'm messing up. Always figures. Okay, so let me just back up here a second. And so now that I have the selection on the outside where I want it, I simply go under my selection menu and I inverse that selection instead. So here we are inversing the selection. So instead of what we had now on the outside, we now have the airplane, and now when I make the mask, we get the airplane again. There's our mask. So that's number 2. Number 3 is we can mask with paint. So if we have an object here and we want to get rid of it on the outside, there's several different ways we can do that. If we start with a mask, we're painting on the mask with our brush with black, and everywhere we paint, of course, it gets rid of that. We can increase and decrease our size of our brush on the fly in order to get rid of the outside stuff very rapidly. When we get down to the nitty-gritty, the small stuff, we reduce the size of our brush. Our brush is also going to have a fairly hard to 100% hardness on it, so that's nice and hard. And I'm going to zoom in to the edge, and let's take a look at this. Now, here's a little trick. If I click once, it makes that particular splot of black there on the mask to start masking. If I hold the Shift key down and click again, it'll draw a straight line between those two. So I can work along the edge of anything simply by clicking and clicking and clicking like this and adding to that edge, and then making my decision exactly where I want that mask to go. And if I make a mistake, I can always flip the colors back and paint that stuff back in. So again, flip the colors black and white in order to be able to make adjustments along the way as you go. Once I have that stuff on the outside done, I can then go back to increasing the size of my brush and simply going right up to it very rapidly. So if you go around the object with a small brush and then take care of the big stuff afterwards, you can get a really accurate masking off of that stuff. When I'm zoomed in and I'm going along the side of it, again with click and then hold the Shift key down again and click again and hold the Shift key down and click like that all the way along the edge. If I want to get to the more of the object, I simply hold the space bar down. That gives me the hand symbol. I can then click and move along or reposition the image so I can see what I'm doing. Let go of the space bar and back to the paintbrush. Again, click once, hold the Shift key down, click again and again and again, and I can go right around any kind of rounded area just by making smaller clicks as I go. So I'm just adding black to that mask in order to be able to mask off the whole thing in the end, at which point I can use Control T to rearrange that size of that thing. Next, object selected but not the background. If you have an object that happens to be against a background, sometimes you pick the background and sometimes you pick the object depending on where the contrast is. So again, here I'm going to my magic wand. Instead of, if I hit 3, I get very little of the object. Even out here I'm going to get very little of it. I'm going to increase my contrast here to 50, my tolerance, and now I get more. I'm holding the Shift key down and I'm adding and adding and adding to this particular object simply by clicking around little clicks at a time until such time as I have all of that object, in which case I can simply make a mask. Alright, done. Now I can make a mask. Hold the Shift key down and grab these little tail pins. So now I have a mask. As soon as I put on the mask, it's going to pay attention to the clipping path, no problem at all. And then if I need to go back and make adjustments, I can simply flip it to white and paint those areas back in that I've missed, little areas here and there as we go along, just to refine the mask. No problem at all. Boom, boom, boom. So those are some ways in which you can get it done. Not going to go to that one. Let's go. Here's another problem with the selection of the photograph that you take. Stock photography a lot of time protects itself by putting these watermarks across things, and they can be really problematic in two ways. One, it's really hard for you to select with the magic wand the backgrounds and stuff without actually getting some of the characters happening or showing up as well. So it's kind of messy. They do that to protect their images, to make sure you can't just steal them and use them. And even if you manage to mask all of the background, you still end up with these lovely Shutterstock words going right across your images, which makes it really messy. So if at all possible, stay away from the ones that have watermarked on them. If you happen to go on a stock photography website, make sure that you register for that website so that you can download unwatermarked versions of all of their images for composing or composing, or comping as they call it. The last one I'm going to show you today is Shift Select. So as I mentioned before, if you have the magic wand and you select the background, again compensating for a background, sometimes you don't want to have it too large on the tolerance. I'm going to make it 20, so when I go back and it's still cutting in there, let's go back down here to 10. So now when I cut in there, I'm just getting the sky. If I hold the Shift key down, I can add to that selection as I go along, clicking and clicking and clicking. If I get too much of the airplane, I can, or the object as it were, I can always Control Z and start from there. Now, I'm not really all that worried about the background here, these other elements. I have most of it now. I could go ahead and put on the mask. Let's try that, which is going to do that part. Of course, I have to invert that mask. I can also use the selection tool with the Shift key to add more to that selection. So once I'm outside my object, I can simply add all of the background that I want, just like this with the Shift key down and just a lasso tool. Now I have all the background, but I don't have the object. What am I going to do? I'm going to inverse the selection, so now I have the object instead of the background, and then when I make my mask, boom, there it is, all nice and isolated. And I can add and subtract to that mask to make sure that I pick up little places like right here where I missed the top of the plane. So that's the lesson for today in terms of going over selection. You should use these techniques with the mask in order to get all of your objects that are necessary for you to replace all of your parts of your body except your head. And I also want you to replace the background at some point with a brand new background. Thank you very much and have a good day.